She walked into the divorce lawyer's office carrying two things: signed papers that would end her marriage to the most dangerous man in the city and a secret that would change everything. Evelyn Hart thought she had escaped Dante Russo's world of power and control. She thought she could walk away clean. She was wrong, because beneath her coat, hidden from everyone, was the one thing that would make a mafia king break every rule he'd ever lived by. This is the story of a woman who fought for her freedom against a man who owned everything except her heart. If you love stories about power, secrets, and impossible choices, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The law offices of Whitmore and Associates occupied the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city that sprawled like a kingdom beneath winter clouds. Everything about the space whispered money and discretion, from the Italian marble floors to the receptionist whose smile was professionally warm and utterly impenetrable. Evelyn Hart sat in the waiting area, her hands folded in her lap, her posture perfect. She wore a charcoal coat buttoned to her throat, and beneath it, a simple black dress that had cost less than the abstract painting hanging on the wall beside her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a low bun, severe and practical. No jewelry except the wedding band she would leave on this floor. She had been Mrs. Dante Russo for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. In 4 hours, if everything went according to plan, she would just be Evelyn again. The receptionist's phone buzzed softly. "Mrs. Russo, Mr. Whitmore is ready for you. Conference room 3 down the hall to your left." Evelyn stood, smooth and unhurried. Her heels clicked against marble as she walked, each step measured, each breath controlled. She had practiced this. Practiced the walk, the expression, the tone of voice she would use. Practiced until there was nothing left that could betray her. The conference room was exactly what she'd expected. A long table of polished wood, leather chairs, a view that made the city look small and conquerable. And at the head of the table, flanked by 2 attorneys who looked like they billed by the minute, sat her husband. Dante Russo didn't stand when she entered. He simply watched her, his dark eyes tracking every movement as she crossed the room and took her seat at the opposite end of the table. The distance between them might have been 6 feet. It felt like miles. He looked exactly as he always did, immaculate in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, his black hair styled with casual precision, his expression unreadable. Dante had been handsome the day she'd met him, handsome the day she'd married him. And he was handsome now, in the cold way that dangerous things often were. "Evelyn." His voice was low, controlled, not quite warm, but not hostile either, just assessing. "Dante." One of his lawyers, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria Chen, slid a folder across the table. "Mrs. Russo, we've reviewed the proposed terms. My client has some concerns regarding the asset division outlined in section—" "The terms are non-negotiable," Evelyn said quietly. Victoria's eyebrow rose a fraction. "Mrs. Russo, I don't think you understand the financial implications of—" "I understand perfectly." Evelyn's gaze never left Dante's. "I want nothing, no property, no investments, no alimony. I'm not contesting the prenuptial agreement. I'm simply asking for what was always mine to begin with, my freedom." Silence filled the room like cold water. Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "You're sure about that?" "Completely. The penthouse alone is worth $12 million. You lived there for 3 years. Legally, you're entitled to—" "I don't want it. The vacation home in Tuscany. No. The car. Nothing, Dante." Her voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath now. The kind that came from decision made and remade until it was unshakable. "I want nothing that came from you or your world. I just want out." Dante leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same intensity he brought to everything: business deals, negotiations, the systematic dismantling of anyone who crossed him. He was a man who controlled entire networks of power through fear and calculation. People didn't say no to Dante Russo. People didn't walk away. "Why?" he asked finally. It was Michael Whitmore, Evelyn's attorney, who answered. "Mr. Russo, with all due respect, the reasons for the dissolution of the marriage are not— I'm asking my wife." Dante's gaze never wavered from Evelyn's face. Why now? Why like this? Evelyn could have said many things. She could have mentioned the 3 years of being invisible in her own marriage, of being introduced as Dante's wife, instead of by her own name, of dinner parties where she was expected to be beautiful and silent, while men who dealt in violence and corruption discussed business over wine that cost more than she used to make in a month. She could have mentioned the loneliness of sleeping next to someone who had never once asked what she dreamed about, what she feared, what she wanted beyond the role he'd assigned her. She could have mentioned the moment 6 months ago when he'd looked at her across the breakfast table and said, almost casually, "I suppose we should discuss why you haven't gotten pregnant yet. I'll have my doctor schedule some tests for you." Some tests for you, not for us, not together, just her, as if she were a malfunctioning appliance that needed troubleshooting, as if she were defective. But she didn't say any of those things, because Dante wouldn't understand them, and she was tired of explaining herself to a man who had never really listened. "Because I deserve more than this," she said simply. Something flickered across Dante's face, too quick to name, gone before she could interpret it. He glanced at Victoria, gave a slight nod. "Fine," he said. "If you want to walk away with nothing, that's your choice." He reached for the pen Victoria offered him. "Let's get this over with." The lawyers went to work, arranging papers, preparing documents, speaking in the coded language of legal proceedings that turned a marriage into a transaction. Evelyn watched it all with a strange sense of detachment, as if she were observing from a great distance. This was really happening. After months of planning, of secretly consulting lawyers, of building up the courage to even consider leaving, it was actually happening. She would be free. Michael Whitmore placed the final set of documents in front of her. "Mrs. Russo, if you'll just sign here, and initial at the bottom of page 4. Evelyn reached for her purse to retrieve her pen. That was when it happened. Her hand, usually so steady, trembled slightly as she lifted her bag. The purse tilted, and before she could catch it, the contents spilled across the polished conference table. Lipstick, keys, wallet, tissues, and a small white envelope with an ultrasound image printed on the front. Time seemed to stop. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she watched the envelope slide across the table, landing face up directly in Dante's line of sight. The black and white image was clearly visible, the unmistakable curve of a growing life, the measurements printed in the corner, the date stamped across the top. 20 weeks, 3 days, 5 months. Dante stared at the image. His hand, which had been holding a pen, went completely still. The lawyers froze, uncertain whether to acknowledge what they were seeing or pretend they hadn't noticed. Evelyn moved quickly, reaching across the table to gather her belongings, but Dante's hand shot out, faster than she'd expected. He picked up the envelope, his fingers careful, almost reverent, as he lifted it to examine the image more closely. "What is this?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. She'd planned to be gone, to be states away, to be unreachable before he ever found out. The pregnancy was hers, her secret, her choice, her future. Not his, never his. "Give it back, please." She kept her voice level, professional, as if they were discussing nothing more significant than a misplaced business card. Dante didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the ultrasound image, scanning every detail, the curved spine, the visible profile, the tiny hands. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Evelyn." When he looked up at her, his expression was completely unreadable. "What is this?" It wasn't a question anymore. It was a command. She could have lied, should have said it was her sister's ultrasound, a friend's baby, a keepsake she was holding for someone else. But Evelyn had spent 3 years living in half-truths and careful omissions, shaping herself into whatever version of a wife Dante needed her to be in any given moment. She was done lying. "It's mine," she said quietly. "I'm 20 weeks pregnant." The words landed like a grenade in the center of the room. Victoria Chen's pen slipped from her fingers. Michael Whitmore's eyes went wide behind his glasses. The other attorney, whose name Evelyn had never caught, looked like he was calculating the fastest route to the door. But Dante's face went absolutely blank. Not angry, not shocked, not anything, just empty. As if his mind had short-circuited trying to process information that didn't fit into any category he understood.
20 weeks, he repeated, his voice hollow. 5 months. Yes, you've been pregnant for 5 months. He said it slowly, like he was testing the words, seeing if they made sense when spoken aloud. We've been living in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, and you've been pregnant for 5 months, and you didn't tell me. It wasn't an accusation.
It was something worse. Confusion from a man who was never confused, uncertainty from someone who had built his entire life on absolute control. Evelyn met his gaze steadily. Yes. Is it? He stopped, and for the first time since she'd known him, Dante Russo seemed unable to finish a sentence. His hand tightened on the ultrasound image. Is it mine? The question should have offended her, should have made her angry. But she understood what he was really asking, not whether she'd been unfaithful, but whether this was real, whether the impossible thing he was looking at was actually happening. Yes, she said. The baby is yours, Dante. The room held its breath. Dante set the ultrasound down carefully, his movements precise and controlled in the way of someone who was fighting very hard not to lose composure. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with methodical attention. Everyone out, he said. Victoria started to protest. Mr. Russo, we're in the middle of out. The lawyers scrambled to their feet, gathering papers with the urgency of people who knew better than to argue when Dante Russo used that tone. Michael Whitmore hesitated, glancing at Evelyn with concern. It's fine, she told him, though her pulse was racing. Give us a moment. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving Evelyn and Dante alone in the conference room. The city sprawled below them, oblivious to the earthquake happening 42 floors above the street. Dante walked to the windows, his back to her, his silhouette dark against the gray winter sky. For a long moment he said nothing, just stood there, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight with tension. 5 months, he said again, still not turning around. You've known for 5 months? And you were going to leave without telling me? Yes.
Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I just supposed to never know I had a child?
Evelyn stayed seated, her hands folded in her lap, her spine straight. I hadn't decided yet. That made him turn. When he looked at her, there was something raw in his expression, something she'd never seen before. Not in 3 years of marriage, not once. You hadn't decided? His voice was soft, dangerous. Whether I had the right to know about my own child, you hadn't decided? No, Evelyn said calmly. I hadn't decided whether you deserved to know. The words hit him like a physical blow. She watched him process them, watched the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands curled into fists at his sides. How long have we been trying? He moved toward her slowly, like he was approaching something wild that might bolt. 2 years, 3. How many doctors did we see? How many specialists? How many times did you sit in those waiting rooms while they ran tests to figure out why you couldn't? He stopped abruptly. Why I couldn't, Evelyn finished quietly. That's what you told me, remember? When the first round of tests came back normal, when the second round showed nothing wrong. You looked at me across the doctor's office and said, "It must be you then. You must be defective." Dante flinched, actually flinched. I never said defective. You did. Evelyn's voice was still quiet, still steady, but there was an edge to it now. Maybe you don't remember. It was a Wednesday afternoon, Dr. Morrison's office. You had a phone call waiting and you were irritated about the appointment running late. You said, well, if everything's fine on my end, she must be defective. Can we fix it or not? Evelyn, you weren't talking to me when you said it. You were talking to the doctor about me, like I wasn't even in the room. She stood now, smooth and controlled, gathering her purse, collecting the ultrasound image that Dante had set down on the table. That was the day I decided to leave you. I just needed time to plan it properly. Dante stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. That's why you want the divorce, because I said something stupid in a doctor's office 3 months ago. No. Evelyn slipped the ultrasound back into her purse. I want the divorce because in 3 years of marriage, you never once asked me what I wanted, what I needed, what I dreamed about. You gave me everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. You treated me like a possession, Dante, a beautiful, expensive thing you could display at parties and put away when you were done with it. That's not fair. isn't it? She met his eyes, unflinching. Tell me one thing about me that you actually know. Not the things in my file, not the background check your people ran before you proposed. Tell me one real thing. Dante opened his mouth, closed it. His expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to name. That's what I thought, Evelyn said softly. She moved toward the door, but Dante stepped into her path, not touching her, not threatening, just there. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same expensive scent he'd worn the day they met. You can't just leave, he said. Not now. Not with... He gestured vaguely toward her midsection, though her coat hid any evidence of the pregnancy. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Nothing to... He laughed, sharp and humorless. Evelyn, you're carrying my child. Our child. You can't seriously think I'm just going to let you walk away. There it was. The truth underneath everything else. Let you. As if she needed his permission. As if her choices were subject to his approval. I'm not asking for your permission, Dante. She stepped around him, heading for the door. I'm informing you of my decision. The divorce proceeds as planned. I'll handle the pregnancy on my own. His hand caught her arm, gentle but firm. Not quite restraining, but definitely stopping her. We're married, he said, his voice low and intense. You're my wife. That's my child. You can't just watch me. Evelyn pulled her arm free and walked to the door. Her hand was on the handle when Dante spoke again. I'll fight it. She paused but didn't turn around. I'll fight the divorce, he continued, his voice hard now, edged with the authority of someone used to getting his way. I'll tie it up in court for years. I'll use every legal avenue available to me. And Evelyn? He waited until she looked back at him. I have a lot of legal avenues. It was a threat, carefully worded, professionally delivered, but unmistakably a threat. Evelyn had expected this, had prepared for it. Dante Russo didn't lose, not in business, not in negotiations, and certainly not in matters he considered his territory. She'd known from the moment she'd decided to leave that he would fight back with everything he had. She just hadn't expected it to hurt quite this much. Do what you need to do, she said quietly. But it won't change anything. I'm still leaving. She opened the door and walked out, past the lawyers huddled in the hallway, past the receptionist with her professional smile, past all the trappings of wealth and power that had defined her life for 3 years. Behind her, she heard Dante's voice, cold and commanding. Victoria. In here. Now. The door slammed shut. Evelyn kept walking. Down the corridor, into the elevator, through the marble lobby. Her heels clicked against stone, each step taking her further from the life she was leaving behind. The winter air hit her face like a slap as she stepped onto the street. Chicago in January was brutal, wind that cut through layers, cold that settled in your bones. She pulled her coat tighter and started walking, no destination in mind, just movement. Her phone buzzed. She didn't need to look to know it was Dante. It buzzed again and again. By the time she'd walked 3 blocks, she had 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. She deleted them all without reading them and kept walking. Evelyn's apartment was in a part of the city that Dante would never think to look. A modest building with a broken buzzer and a landlord who asked for first and last month's rent in cash. It was small, barely 400 square feet, with a kitchen the size of a closet and a bathroom where you could brush your teeth while sitting on the toilet. It was the first place that had ever truly been hers. She'd rented it 4 months ago, paying from an account Dante didn't know about, furnished it with things from thrift stores and estate sales. The bed was secondhand, the dishes mismatched, the curtains hemmed by hand because she'd forgotten how expensive alterations were when you didn't have unlimited money. She loved every imperfect inch of it. Now she sat on the worn couch, still in her coat, staring at the ultrasound image she'd placed on the coffee table. 20 weeks, 3 days. Halfway through, halfway to meeting the tiny person who was currently using her bladder as a trampoline. Her phone rang again. This time it wasn't Dante. Evie, did it happen? Are you okay? Sarah's voice was warm and worried, exactly what Evelyn needed to hear. Sarah Chen, no relation to Victoria, thank God, had been Evelyn's college roommate, the maid of honor at her wedding, and the only person who had looked at Evelyn's marriage to Dante Russo and said, "Are you sure about this?" It happened, Evelyn said, or it started to happen. Then my purse spilled and, oh no. He saw the ultrasound. Silence on the other end. Then, shit, yeah. What did he say? He threatened to fight the divorce, tie it up in court, use all his resources to... Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. She took a breath, steadied herself. He's going to make this difficult. Of course he is. He's Dante Russo. Making things difficult is his entire personality. Sarah paused. Are you safe? Like physically safe? He won't hurt me. Evelyn said it with certainty. Whatever else Dante was, he'd never raised a hand to her. Never even raised his voice. Really. His violence was reserved for the business side of his life, the parts he kept carefully separate from their marriage. Okay, but Evie, he's going to come after you. You know that, right? He's not going to just let you disappear with his kid. I know. So what's the plan? Evelyn looked around her small apartment, at the books she'd bought herself, the plants she was learning to keep alive, the life she was building piece by piece. A life where she wasn't Dante Russo's wife, wasn't anyone's possession, wasn't defined by someone else's expectations. The plan is to keep going, she said quietly. I'm not running, Sarah. I'm not hiding. I'm just living on my own terms. And if Dante wants to fight that, he'll find out I'm a lot harder to control than he thinks. That's my girl. Sarah's voice was fierce with pride. You need anything? Money? A place to stay? Someone to slash his tires? Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. I'm good. But thank you. Call me if that changes. And Evie, I'm really proud of you. After they hung up, Evelyn sat in the growing darkness of her apartment, one hand resting on the small curve of her belly that would soon become impossible to hide. The baby moved, a flutter that still felt strange and miraculous. It's okay, she whispered to the life growing inside her. We're going to be okay. She almost believed it. What? 3 days later, Evelyn arrived at her waitressing shift at Marcello's to find an envelope taped to her locker. Inside was a court summons. Dante was contesting the divorce on grounds of reconciliation potential. He'd also filed a motion for temporary spousal support, forcing her to accept money she didn't want, and a preliminary injunction preventing her from making any major decisions regarding the pregnancy without his consultation. He was building a cage made of legal paperwork. You okay? Marcus, her manager, leaned against the doorframe of the break room. He was in his 50s, a former chef who'd opened Marcello's 20 years ago and ran it with firm kindness. You look like you've seen a ghost. Just some legal stuff. Evelyn folded the papers and shoved them in her bag. Nothing I can't handle. Marcus didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. That was one thing she appreciated about this job. Nobody asked questions they didn't need answers to. She worked the dinner shift in a daze, carrying plates of pasta and glasses of wine, smiling at customers, keeping her expression pleasant even though her mind was racing through legal strategies and potential countermoves. Michael Whitmore had warned her this might happen, but reading about it in an email was different from holding the actual court documents. Dante wasn't just fighting the divorce, he was fighting for control. Her shift ended at 11. She was counting out her tips in the back room when Marcus appeared again. Someone out front asking for you, he said, his expression carefully neutral in a way that made her stomach drop. Who? Didn't give a name, just said he needs to speak with Evelyn Hart. Marcus paused. He's at table 12, the one we usually reserve for anniversaries. The best table in the restaurant. Of course. Evelyn's first instinct was to walk out the back door and keep walking, but running would only delay the inevitable, and she'd promised herself she was done running. She found Dante sitting alone at a table set for two, surrounded by the warm glow of candlelight and the low murmur of late-night diners. He looked out of place in his three-piece suit, too formal for the casual elegance of Marcello's, too controlled for a restaurant that prided itself on warmth and authenticity. He stood when he saw her approach. Please sit, he said quietly. I'm working. Marcus gave you a break. 30 minutes. At her look of surprise, he added, I asked nicely. You probably tipped him nicely, too. I may have contributed to his daughter's college fund. Dante pulled out the chair opposite his. Please, Evelyn, 30 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Against her better judgment, she sat, but she didn't relax, didn't lean back, didn't give him any sign that she was comfortable with this ambush. Nice place, Dante said, looking around. I've never been here before. That's because you only eat at restaurants with Michelin stars. True. He nodded to the waiter who'd appeared with water glasses. Can I order you something? Dinner? Dessert? I've been carrying plates of carbonara for 6 hours. I'm good. How about some tea then? Chamomile? I remember you liked chamomile. The fact that he remembered anything about her preferences was surprising enough that Evelyn paused. Fine, chamomile. Dante ordered 2 cups and waited until the waiter had departed before speaking again. I got your lawyer's response to the court filings. Then you know my answer is no. To all of it. Evelyn, be reasonable. You can't support yourself and a baby on a waitress's salary. Watch me. You're working on your feet 6 hours a night while 5 months pregnant. That's not sustainable. It's not safe. Plenty of women work through their pregnancies, Dante. I'll be fine. His jaw tightened. You're not plenty of women. You're my... He stopped himself. You're carrying my child. That makes your well-being my concern. No, Evelyn said firmly. It doesn't. I'm not your wife anymore, remember? You don't get to control what I do or don't do. The courts say differently. The courts say I have to consult you on major decisions regarding the pregnancy. That doesn't mean I have to follow your orders. She leaned forward slightly. And it definitely doesn't mean I have to take your money. Dante was quiet for a moment, studying her face in the candlelight. Why are you doing this? Is it really so terrible, the idea of accepting help from me? It's not help if it comes with strings attached. What strings? I'm offering financial support, that's all. No expectations, no conditions. Everything you do has conditions, Dante. The tea arrived, and Evelyn wrapped her hands around the warm cup. Every gift, every gesture, every kindness, it all comes with invisible strings that pull me back into your orbit. I've spent 3 years tangled in those strings. I'm not doing it again. You're being paranoid. Am I? She met his eyes. Tell me honestly, if I accept your financial support, will you use it in court to argue that we're reconciling? That I'm financially dependent on you, therefore the divorce should be postponed or denied? His silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. Evelyn sipped her tea. I'm not playing these games anymore. Dante leaned back in his chair, and for a moment, he looked tired. Not physically, he always looked immaculate, but emotionally, like a man who'd been fighting a battle he didn't know how to win. I'm trying to do the right thing, he said quietly. I know I wasn't a good husband. I know that now, but I'm trying to do better, for you, for the baby. You're trying to regain control, Evelyn corrected. That's different from doing the right thing. Is it so wrong to want to be part of my child's life? No, but it's wrong to use legal warfare to force your way into mine. Dante's expression hardened. What would you have me do, Evelyn? Just step aside? Watch from a distance while you raise my child alone? Never have any say in his education, his upbringing, his future? His? Evelyn raised an eyebrow. I never said it was a boy. He had the grace to look caught. The ultrasound image, I had someone look at it. They said based on the positioning, it's likely... You had someone analyze my private medical information? The anger in her voice was cold, controlled. You took my ultrasound picture and showed it to someone without my permission? A doctor, a qualified professional who, without my permission, Dante. He set his cup down carefully. I wanted to know. Then you should have asked me. Would you have told me? Evelyn thought about that. Would she have? Even now, faced with his direct question, did she want to share this information with him? I don't know, she admitted, but it should have been my choice to make. They sat in silence, the sounds of the restaurant swirling around them, laughter from a nearby table, the clinking of silverware, the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Ordinary sounds, ordinary life. The kind of life Evelyn had been building for herself piece by piece. I'm scared, Dante said suddenly. Evelyn looked up, startled. In 3 years of marriage, she'd never heard those words from him. Dante Russo didn't get scared. He made other people scared. Of what? She asked. That I'll lose you both. His hands were clenched on the table, knuckles white. That I'll become one of those fathers who sees his kid every other weekend, if that. That I'll miss everything. First words, first steps, first day of school. That my child will grow up knowing his mother's love, but thinking his father is, what? A stranger? A villain? Someone who sends checks but never shows up? There was raw honesty in his voice that caught Evelyn off guard. This wasn't manipulation, or if it was the most genuine manipulation she'd ever witnessed. That's up to you, she said quietly. What kind of father you want to be, what kind of man you want to be, those are your choices, Dante, not mine. Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this. I can't, because this isn't something you can fix with money or power or legal maneuvers. This is about you figuring out who you want to be when no one's watching. When there's no advantage to gain, no deal to close, no empire to build. Just you and a child who needs a father, not a king. Dante stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. Drop the court cases, Evelyn continued. Stop trying to control me through lawyers and money. If you want to be part of this baby's life, then be part of it. Not because a judge ordered it, not because you're protecting your legacy or your lineage or whatever you call it in your world, but because you actually want to be a father, a real one. And if I do that? His voice was careful, measured. Drop the legal filings, stop pushing for the support agreement. If I do all that, will you let me be involved? Will you tell me when you have doctor's appointments? Let me know if there are complications? Include me in decisions? It was a negotiation. Of course it was. Everything with Dante was a negotiation, but maybe that was okay. Maybe starting from a place of clear terms and honest expectations was better than the ambiguous disaster their marriage had been. Yes, Evelyn said. If you genuinely back off and let me have my freedom, I'll keep you informed about the pregnancy. I'll consider your input on major decisions. I'll let you be part of this. But not reconcile? Never. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. The divorce goes forward? Yes. And after? When the baby's born? We figure out co-parenting, like civilized adults who respect each other's boundaries and autonomy. Dante was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, and showed her the screen. It was an email to Victoria Chen, instructing her to withdraw all pending motions regarding the divorce and pregnancy. Send it, Evelyn said. He did, right there in front of her. A moment later, Victoria's response pinged back. Are you sure? This significantly weakens our position. Dante typed back. I'm sure. Proceed with clean dissolution as Mrs. Russo requested. He showed Evelyn the exchange, then set his phone face down on the table between them. Done, he said. No more legal warfare. You have your freedom. Evelyn should have felt relief, should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt the strange, unsettling awareness of having just negotiated something important with a man who had spent 3 years failing to understand that some things couldn't be negotiated. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me. Dante's smile was bitter. I'm not doing this to be noble. I'm doing it because I don't know any other way to keep you from disappearing completely. I'm not disappearing. I'll be here, in Chicago, living my life. In this neighborhood? He glanced around and she could see him cataloging details. The modest decor, the affordable prices on the menu, the general atmosphere of working-class authenticity. Why here? Why not somewhere safer, more comfortable? Because this is real, Evelyn said simply. The penthouse wasn't real. The designer clothes, the charity galas, the life you gave me, none of that was real. This is a restaurant in a neighborhood with a crime rate that you probably contribute to, she finished. At his expression, she softened slightly. I'm safe here, Dante. Safer than I ever was in your world. He looked like he wanted to argue, but stopped himself. Learning, actually learning. Fine, he said, but if anything happens, if you need anything at all, you call me immediately. I have friends, support systems. I'm sure you do. Call me anyway. It was vintage Dante, agreeing to her terms while immediately trying to renegotiate the details. But there was something almost endearing about it now, in the context of him genuinely trying rather than simply commanding. I'll think about it, Evelyn said, which was more than she'd planned to offer. Her 30-minute break was nearly up. She stood, and Dante stood with her automatically, old-fashioned manners drilled in by whoever had raised him to be a gentleman in public and a king in private. Thank you for the tea, she said. Evelyn? He stopped her before she could walk away. The baby, are you both healthy? Everything's okay. The genuine worry in his voice almost undid her. We're healthy, she said softly. Everything's progressing normally. The next ultrasound is in 3 weeks. Can I? He hesitated, uncertain in a way she'd never seen him before. Would you tell me when it is? The appointment? I'll text you the details. His relief was visible, tangible. Thank you. Evelyn nodded and walked back to the kitchen, feeling his eyes on her until she disappeared through the swinging doors. Marcus was waiting in the break room. Everything okay? Yeah, Evelyn said, surprising herself by meaning it. I think maybe it actually is. The ultrasound appointment fell on a Tuesday morning, cold and gray. The kind of January day that made Chicago feel like it existed at the edge of the world. Evelyn arrived at Dr. Patricia Reeves's office 15 minutes early, checking in with the receptionist and taking a seat in the waiting room among the other expectant mothers in various stages of pregnancy. She'd texted Dante the appointment details 3 days ago. He'd responded within minutes. I'll be there. Now, watching the clock tick closer to her appointment time, she wondered if he'd actually show. Maybe he'd gotten caught up in business. Maybe he'd changed his mind about being involved. Maybe... The door opened, bringing with it a gust of cold air, and Dante Russo in a cashmere overcoat that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He spotted her immediately, navigating through the waiting room with the focused intensity he brought to everything. Several women looked up as he passed, their eyes tracking him with the kind of interest that beautiful, powerful men always generated. Dante didn't notice. His attention was entirely on Evelyn. Am I late? He asked, sitting in the chair beside her. 2 minutes early, actually. Good. He unbuttoned his coat but didn't take it off, as if uncertain whether he was staying. How are you feeling? Fine. A little nervous, but that's normal. Nervous about what? Evelyn gestured vaguely toward the examination rooms. Every appointment, there's this moment where you wonder if everything's still okay. If the heartbeat's still strong, if the measurements are right, if something's gone wrong since the last visit. Dante's expression shifted, concern replacing his usual controlled composure. Has something gone wrong? No, it's just pregnancy anxiety. Totally normal, according to Dr. Reeves. He nodded, processing this information like he was filing it away for future reference. Then, surprising her, he reached over and took her hand. Not possessively, not demandingly, just a simple gesture of support. It's going to be fine, he said quietly. Evelyn almost pulled away, almost reminded him that hand-holding wasn't part of their negotiated agreement. But there was something genuine in his touch, something that felt less like ownership and more like solidarity. So she let him hold her hand until the nurse called her name. Dr. Reeves was a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd delivered thousands of babies and had very little patience for drama. She greeted Evelyn with a warm smile, then turned that smile toward Dante. You must be the father, she said, shaking his hand. Dante Russo. Patricia Reeves. Nice to finally meet you. She gestured toward the examination table. Evelyn, go ahead and get comfortable. We'll do the measurements first, then the ultrasound. The examination was routine. Blood pressure, weight, fundal height. Dr. Reeves asked questions about symptoms, energy levels, any concerns. Evelyn answered while Dante sat in the corner chair, watching everything with the focused attention of someone studying a foreign language. Everything looks good, Dr. Reeves said finally. Baby's measuring right on track for 23 weeks. Are you feeling movement regularly? Every day? Especially at night? Active baby, that's a good sign. She turned to her ultrasound machine, squirting gel onto Evelyn's exposed belly. Ready to see your little one? The screen flickered to life, shadows and light resolving into the unmistakable shape of a baby, bigger now than in the last ultrasound, more defined. Evelyn could see the curve of the spine, the chambers of the heart, tiny fingers that seemed to wave at the camera. There's the head, Dr. Reeves narrated, moving the wand across Evelyn's stomach. Good, strong heartbeat, about 145 beats per minute. Arms, legs, all the important bits in all the right places. Dante had moved closer without Evelyn noticing, standing now beside the examination table, his eyes locked on the screen. His expression was completely unguarded. Wonder and fear and something else, something that looked almost like grief. Can I... He started, then stopped. Can you what? Doctor. Reeves asked kindly. Can I hear it? The heartbeat? Of course. She adjusted a dial, and suddenly the room filled with the rapid whoosh, whoosh, whoosh of a heartbeat, fast and strong and impossibly alive. Dante's hand found Evelyn's again, gripping tightly. They listened in silence, this strange, almost family, connected by the sound of a life they'd created together, even as they were choosing to live apart. "Would you like to know the sex?" Dr. Reeves asked after a moment. Evelyn had been asked this at her last appointment and had declined. The baby's gender felt like information she wanted to keep private, something that was just hers in a pregnancy that was rapidly becoming complicated by Dante's involvement. But now, looking at his face as he stared at the ultrasound screen, she reconsidered. "Dante?" she said quietly. "Do you want to know?" He tore his gaze from the screen to look at her. "It's your choice." "I'm asking what you want." "I want—" He swallowed hard. "I want to know everything, every detail. I want to know if it's a boy or a girl, what names you're considering, what color you're painting the nursery. I want to know all of it, Evelyn. But only if you're willing to share." It was the most honest thing he'd said to her in 3 years. "Okay," she told Dr. Reeves, "tell us." The doctor smiled and moved the wand to a different angle. "Well, baby's being cooperative today. See this here?" She pointed to a spot on the screen that looked like everything else. Shadows and light and biological mystery. "You're having a boy." "A boy. A son." Evelyn felt something crack open in her chest, joy and terror in equal measure. A boy who would have Dante's dark eyes, maybe, or his stubborn jaw. A boy who would grow up navigating the complicated legacy of a father who ruled an empire built on fear. She looked at Dante and found him staring at the screen with an expression of absolute devastation. Not disappointment. Devastation. Like he'd just been given something precious and had no idea how to hold it without breaking it. "A son," he whispered. Dr. Reeves, with the emotional intelligence of someone who'd witnessed countless family dynamics, quietly excused herself to print the ultrasound images, giving them a moment of privacy. Dante sank into the chair beside the examination table, his hand still gripping Evelyn's. "I don't know how to be a father," he said, his voice raw. "I don't know the first thing about raising a child." "Nobody does, not really. You just figure it out as you go." "My father—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "My father taught me how to run an empire, how to command respect through fear, how to see people as assets or liabilities, allies or enemies. He never taught me how to be gentle, how to be kind, how to love something without trying to control it." It was the most Dante had ever told her about his past. In 3 years of marriage, he'd mentioned his father exactly twice, both times in the context of business strategy. "Then you have a chance to do it differently," Evelyn said quietly. "You can choose to be the kind of father he wasn't." "What if I can't? What if I'm too much like him?" "You're already different. You're here, you're asking questions, you're trying." She squeezed his hand. "That's more than a lot of fathers do." Dr. Reeves returned with printed ultrasound images, tactfully pretending not to notice Dante's suspiciously bright eyes. She reviewed the rest of the appointment details. Next visit in 4 weeks, continue the prenatal vitamins, call if there were any concerning symptoms. As they were leaving, she pulled Evelyn aside while Dante was getting his coat. "He seems like he's trying," she said quietly. "That's good to see." "We're not back together," Evelyn clarified quickly. "We're just co-parenting, or learning to. Whatever you want to call it, it's working. Baby's healthy, you're healthy, and that's what matters." Dr. Reeves smiled. "See you in 4 weeks." Outside, the gray day had started spitting snow, tiny flakes that melted on contact with the pavement. Dante walked Evelyn to her car, a 10-year-old Honda she'd bought with her own money, parked 3 blocks away because the clinic's lot was full. "This is your car?" He looked at it like it was a curiosity from another century. "It runs. It's reliable. It's mine." "It doesn't have side airbags." "It has airbags, just not side ones." "Evelyn, you're 6 months pregnant. You should be driving something safer." "Dante, I'm serious. What if you got into an accident? What if you trusted me to make my own decisions about my own safety?" She unlocked the car and opened the door. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm not trading this car for something you pick out. That's non-negotiable. He looked like he wanted to argue but caught himself. Learning. Still learning. At least let me have my mechanic look at it, he said. Make sure everything's running properly. No charge, no strings, just peace of mind. Evelyn considered this. It was a reasonable request, actually. And her car had been making a weird rattling sound lately that she'd been ignoring because a mechanic's visit wasn't in her budget. Fine, she said, but I choose the mechanic, not one of your people. Deal. He pulled out his phone. When's your next shift at Marcello's? Why? Because I'd like to take you to dinner, somewhere other than your workplace. Somewhere we can talk about, he gestured vaguely, everything, parenting, logistics, names maybe. Names? You said you were considering names. I'd like to hear them. Evelyn should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, kept their interactions limited to the strictly necessary. But the man standing in front of her wasn't the husband who'd called her defective. This was someone different, uncertain and trying, and maybe, possibly, capable of change. Thursday, she said. I'm off Thursday. I'll pick you up at 7. I'll meet you there. Text me the address. Another negotiation, another compromise. It seemed to be the language they both spoke best. Dante nodded, stepping back to let her get in the car. But before she could close the door, he leaned down. Evelyn, thank you for letting me be there today, for letting me hear his heartbeat. His voice was rough with emotion. I won't forget it. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she just nodded. He closed her door carefully, like she was something fragile, and stood watching as she pulled away from the curb. In her rearview mirror, she saw him still standing there, a dark figure against the gray snow, holding the ultrasound images like they were made of glass. The week that followed settled into a strange new rhythm. Dante texted every morning, simple messages asking how she slept, if she needed anything, if the baby was active. Evelyn answered honestly, surprised to find that his questions felt less like surveillance and more like genuine concern. Thursday arrived faster than she expected. The restaurant Dante chose was in River North, upscale but not ostentatious, the kind of place that valued good food over celebrity chef hype. Evelyn arrived first, was shown to a quiet table near the back, away from the main dining room's bustle. Dante appeared 10 minutes later, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked nervous. Traffic, he explained, taking his seat. I should have left earlier. It's fine. I just got here. They ordered. Evelyn chose the salmon, Dante the steak, and then sat in the kind of awkward silence that people who used to know each other very well but were now strangers fell into. So, Dante said finally, names. Evelyn smiled despite herself. I've been thinking about it. Leo. I keep coming back to Leo. Like the constellation? Like strength. Like a lion. Something brave. She traced patterns on the tablecloth. I want him to be brave. Braver than I was. You left me, Dante pointed out. While pregnant, with no financial support, no safety net. That's the definition of brave. That's the definition of desperate. Maybe. Or maybe it's both. He leaned back as the waiter brought their drinks, sparkling water for Evelyn, scotch for Dante. Leo Russo. It has a good sound to it. Leo Hart, Evelyn corrected quietly. The correction landed between them like a stone. He'll have your last name? Dante's voice was carefully neutral. He'll have mine. Yes. Can I ask why? Evelyn considered how to explain this without it sounding like the rejection it partly was. Because Russo comes with weight, expectations. A legacy that I don't want him carrying before he's old enough to choose it for himself. Hart comes with nothing, Dante said. No protection, no resources, no freedom, Evelyn finished. Hart comes with freedom to be whoever he wants to be, not who his father's empire demands he become. Dante took a drink of his scotch, processing. And if he wants to be part of that empire someday, if he chooses it, then that will be his choice, made as an adult who understands what he's choosing, not a birthright forced on him before he can even speak. Their food arrived, giving them both an excuse to focus on something other than the fundamental disagreement hovering over the table. They ate in silence for several minutes before Dante spoke again. I've been thinking about what you said, about being a different kind of father. And? I don't know how to separate who I am from what I do. The business, the empire. It's not something I clock out from. It's who I've been since I was 20 years old. I'm not asking you to stop being who you are, Evelyn said carefully. I'm asking you to consider who you want to be for him. For Leo. A father who's present, who shows up, who teaches him to be strong but also kind. Dante set down his fork. That's what you want, right? That's what he'll need. Then I'll learn how. He said it with the same determination he probably brought to hostile takeovers and business negotiations. I'll figure it out. Whatever it takes. Evelyn believed him, which was somehow more terrifying than if she hadn't. They talked through dinner about logistics, doctor appointments, birthing classes, the approaching reality of a newborn who would need both of them in different ways. Dante listened more than he spoke, asking questions instead of issuing directives, considering her answers instead of dismissing them. It was almost like talking to a different person. After dinner, Dante walked her to her car, the same battered Honda he'd criticized before. This time, he didn't comment on its lack of side airbags, just made sure she was safely inside before stepping back. Same time next week? He asked through her window. You want to make this a regular thing? I want to be involved, Evelyn. Actually involved. Not just getting updates via text. I want to know what you're eating, how you're sleeping, whether your back hurts from carrying around my son. He paused. Unless that's too much. If it is, tell me, and I'll back off. It was too much. It was also somehow exactly what she needed, someone to witness this journey with her, even if they weren't traveling the same path. Same time next week, she agreed. His smile was small but genuine. I'll text you the location. As Evelyn drove home through the snowy streets, one hand resting on her growing belly, she felt the baby move, a strong kick that made her gasp and laugh at the same time. Your father's trying, she told her son. I don't know if that's good news or terrifying, but he's trying. The baby kicked again, as if in response. Back at her apartment, Evelyn found a package waiting outside her door. No return address, but she recognized the handwriting on the label, Dante's careful, precise script. Inside was a book. What to Expect When You're Expecting, heavily bookmarked with sticky notes. Flipping through, she found Dante's handwriting in the margins. Questions, observations, entire passages highlighted. There was also a note written on heavy cardstock in his distinctive hand. I'm reading everything I can find, probably too much. Definitely annoying Victoria by asking questions she can't bill for. But I'm trying to understand what you're going through. What he's going through. I know I can't be there for every moment, but I want to be prepared for the ones I am there for. D. Evelyn set the book on her coffee table next to the latest ultrasound pictures. The image of their son, Leo, curled in that timeless prenatal position, already perfect, already his own person. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dante. Did the package arrive? She typed back, yes. Thank you. His response came immediately. Is the section on third trimester symptoms accurate? The book says swelling and back pain are normal, but it seems excessive. Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. Of course, Dante Russo would approach pregnancy with the same intensity he brought to hostile takeovers. It's accurate, she wrote back. All normal. And you're experiencing these symptoms? Some of them. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. I will. She set her phone down and picked up the book, flipping to the section Dante had bookmarked most heavily. Chapter 12. Preparing for Fatherhood. Nearly every paragraph was highlighted, the margins filled with his notes. How do I know if I'm doing this right? What if I mess this up? How do I teach him to be better than I am? The vulnerability in those questions took her breath away. This was Dante without his armor, without his control, facing the one thing in his life he couldn't intimidate or outmaneuver or buy his way through. Fatherhood. The weeks began to blur together, marked by doctor appointments and dinners and text message check-ins that became part of Evelyn's daily routine. Dante showed up for every ultrasound, every test, every moment she allowed him to witness. He started bringing her things, not expensive gifts, but practical ones. Ginger tea for morning sickness that had returned in her second trimester. A pregnancy pillow when she mentioned having trouble sleeping. Books about child development that he'd already read and annotated. He He was learning her, she realized, actually paying attention to what she needed rather than assuming he already knew. It was unsettling. And something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. One evening in early February, Evelyn's shift at Marcello's was interrupted by a commotion in the dining room. She emerged from the kitchen to find two men in expensive suits blocking the entrance, their posture aggressive, their voices raised. Marcus was trying to calm the situation, but one of the men pushed past him, scanning the restaurant until his eyes landed on Evelyn. "You," he said, pointing. "Evelyn Hart." She froze, one hand instinctively moving to her belly, now obviously pregnant at 26 weeks. "Can I help you?" Marcus stepped between them, protective. "We're here to deliver a message." The man pulled out an envelope, tried to hand it to Evelyn. From Vincent Corelli. The name sent ice through her veins. Vincent Corelli, one of Dante's rivals, a man whose name appeared in newspapers alongside words like investigation and racketeering and occasionally murder. "I don't accept messages from Vincent Corelli," Evelyn said, her voice steadier than she felt. "He insists, says it concerns your situation." The man's eyes dropped to her belly, and the threat in that glance was unmistakable. Marcus pulled out his phone. "You need to leave, now, or I'm calling the police." "Go ahead. We'll be gone before they arrive. But the message stands. Vincent wants to talk to Dante's woman. Says it's in everyone's best interest." "I'm not Dante's woman." The man smiled, cold and knowing. "That's not what Vincent hears. He hears Dante's got himself a pregnant wife he can't quite let go of. Makes a man vulnerable, makes him sloppy." "Get out," Marcus said, his phone already dialing. "Now." The men left, but not before the first one dropped the envelope on the nearest table. It sat there like a live grenade, innocent paper that represented something far more dangerous. Evelyn's hands were shaking as she picked it up. Inside was a single piece of paper with a typed message. "Your husband has taken something that belongs to me. I'm willing to negotiate for its return. You're invited to facilitate that conversation. Come alone to the address below, Friday midnight, or I'll be forced to deliver my message through less pleasant channels." An address in the warehouse district followed, the kind of place where bodies got found, not conversations had. "Evie?" Marcus was beside her, reading over her shoulder. "What the hell is this?" "It's a threat." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Against me. Against the baby. We're calling the police." "The police can't help with this." She pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling over the screen as she found Dante's number. He answered on the first ring. "Evelyn? What's wrong?" "Vincent Corelli just sent men to my workplace. They delivered a message. A threat." Silence. Then, in a voice she'd never heard from him, cold and deadly. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine, but Dante, they mentioned the baby. They know about... I'm on my way. Don't go anywhere, don't talk to anyone. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Dante." But he'd already hung up. Marcus insisted she sit down, brought her water, hovered with the protective concern of someone who'd seen too much violence in his own past to take threats lightly. The other waitstaff clustered nearby, uncertain and worried. Dante arrived in 8 minutes. Evelyn heard him before she saw him, the door slamming open, his voice cutting through the restaurant's low murmur with absolute authority. "Where is she?" Then he was there, crossing the dining room in long strides, his expression a mask of controlled fury. He crouched beside her chair, his hands gentle as they framed her face, his eyes scanning her for injuries. "Did they touch you?" "No, they just delivered this." She handed him the envelope. Dante read the message, his jaw tightening with each word. When he finished, he carefully folded the paper and tucked it into his coat pocket. "You're not going," he said flatly. "I wasn't planning to." "Good." He stood, pulling out his phone, because Vincent Corelli just made the last mistake of his miserable life. "Dante, wait!" But he was already making calls, issuing orders in a low voice that carried the weight of absolute command. Evelyn caught fragments. Every location. Tonight. Send a message. Before he stepped away to continue the conversation privately. Marcus sat down across from her. "That's your husband?" "Ex-husband. Almost. He looks ready to start a war." "He probably is." Evelyn rubbed her temples, exhaustion crashing over her.
This is exactly what I was trying to avoid, getting dragged into his world, becoming a target because of who he is. From where I'm sitting, you became a target the moment you got pregnant with his kid. Geography doesn't change that. It was brutally true.
She could live in the smallest apartment, work the humblest job, keep her distance from Dante's empire, but she was still carrying his son, still connected to him in the most fundamental way possible, still vulnerable. Dante returned, his expression grim. I'm taking you somewhere safe, now. I have an apartment that Vincent's people now know about. You're not going back there. Not tonight. Dante, I can't just disappear. I have work. I have Marcus. Dante turned to her manager, pulling out his wallet. How much to keep her on the payroll while she takes an extended leave? You can't buy my job, Evelyn protested. I'm not buying your job. I'm ensuring you have one to come back to when this is resolved. He looked at Marcus. Well? Marcus considered, then named a figure. Dante doubled it without blinking and added, that includes upgrading your security system and hiring 2 guards for the evening shifts. Non-negotiable. Done, Marcus said, shaking his hand. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her independence, wanted to maintain the boundaries they'd carefully negotiated. But she was 6 months pregnant, and someone had just threatened her son. Pride could wait. Where are we going? She asked Dante. Somewhere Vincent Corelli will never find you. Somewhere I can keep you both safe while I handle this. Handle this how? His smile was cold and absolutely terrifying. By reminding Vincent why nobody threatens what's mine. There it was again, that possessive certainty that she belonged to him. But for once, Evelyn didn't correct him. Because tonight, being his meant being protected. And protection was what her son needed most. Dante's car was waiting outside Marcello's, a black sedan with tinted windows, and a driver who didn't ask questions. Evelyn slid into the back seat, her heart still racing from the confrontation, while Dante made 3 more phone calls in rapid succession, each one delivered in the clipped, authoritative tone of a man marshaling forces for war. They drove through the city in tense silence, passing neighborhoods Evelyn recognized and then ones she didn't, until finally the car turned down a tree-lined street in Lincoln Park, where old money lived behind iron gates and manicured hedges. The driver pulled up to a brownstone that looked like it had been standing since before the Chicago fire, all elegant brick and leaded glass windows. Where are we? Evelyn asked. Somewhere Vincent doesn't know about. Dante helped her from the car, his hand steady on her elbow. I bought it 2 years ago under a shell corporation. No public records, no paper trail. As far as the world knows, it's owned by a hedge fund manager who's never in town. Inside, the brownstone was furnished with understated luxury, hardwood floors, crown molding, furniture that looked antique but comfortable. Nothing like the cold modern minimalism of the penthouse they'd shared during their marriage. This felt lived in, human, real. A woman appeared from the back of the house, mid-50s with kind eyes and the capable demeanor of someone who'd spent decades managing crises. Mr. Russo, everything's ready as you requested. Thank you, Anna. This is Evelyn. She'll be staying here until further notice. Anna's gaze dropped to Evelyn's belly, and her expression softened. Of course. The guest room upstairs has fresh linens, and I've stocked the kitchen with basics. If you need anything specific, just let me know. Anna runs the property, Dante explained. She lives in the garden apartment out back. If I'm not here and you need anything, she's the person to call. I don't need a babysitter, Evelyn said. You need protection. There's a difference. Dante's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, frowned. I have to go handle this. Anna will show you around. Handle what exactly? The situation with Vincent. Evelyn caught his arm before he could leave. Dante, what are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. Vincent's been moving into territory that isn't his, making plays he has no business making. He thinks threatening you will bring me to the negotiating table. He's wrong. You're going to hurt him. It wasn't a question. Dante's expression confirmed what she already knew. I'm going to remove the threat, he said carefully. How I do that depends on how reasonable Vincent decides to be. And if he's not reasonable, then I'll do what's necessary to protect my family. He said it simply, matter-of-factly, as if violence was just another business strategy. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone except Anna or me. Don't go outside. Don't call anyone who might inadvertently give away your location. For how long? As long as it takes. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gesture so unexpected and tender that Evelyn forgot to pull away. I'll be back before morning. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. Anna appeared in the hallway, her expression sympathetic. Let me show you upstairs. You must be exhausted. The guest room was on the second floor, overlooking a small garden that was bare now in February, but probably beautiful in summer. The bed was enormous, piled with pillows, the kind of mattress that cost more than Evelyn's monthly rent. There was a private bathroom with heated floors and a soaking tub, a closet already stocked with clothes in her size, maternity clothes, she realized, expensive ones. Mr. Russo had me order some things, Anna said, following her gaze. I hope the sizes are right. If not, we can exchange them. When did he do this? He called 3 days ago, said he might need a safe place for you and wanted everything ready just in case. Anna adjusted the curtains, checking that they were fully closed. He's been very thorough, almost obsessive actually. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, her hands resting on her belly where Leo was doing somersaults. 3 days ago. Dante had prepared this place 3 days ago, before Vincent's men had shown up, before the direct threat, as if he'd anticipated the danger before it materialized, as if he'd been planning how to protect her all along. Anna? Evelyn asked quietly. How long have you worked for Dante? 15 years, since he was just starting out. Have you ever seen him like this protective over someone? Anna considered the question carefully. Mr. Russo is protective of his interests, his business, his reputation, his position. But this is different. This is personal. I've never seen him personal before. After Anna left, Evelyn tried to sleep, but her mind kept racing through the evening's events. Vincent Corelli's threat. Dante's cold fury, the way he'd said my family, like it was something real and solid instead of the complicated mess it actually was. She must have dozed eventually because she woke to the sound of the front door opening downstairs. Pale dawn light filtered through the curtains. Her phone showed 5:30 in the morning. Evelyn went downstairs carefully, one hand on the banister, and found Dante in the kitchen making coffee. He'd removed his suit jacket and tie, rolled up his sleeves. There was blood on his right cuff. He saw her looking and immediately moved to the sink, scrubbing at the stain. It's not mine. Whose is it? Vincent's. A little. Not enough to matter. Evelyn should have been horrified, should have been disgusted by the casual violence implied in that statement. Instead, she felt a complicated relief. Dante was here, unharmed, and whatever had happened with Vincent was apparently over. Is he dead? She asked. No. Alive and significantly more cooperative than he was 12 hours ago. Dante dried his hands, turned to face her properly. Vincent won't be bothering you again, or anyone else for that matter. He's leaving Chicago within the week. You made him leave the city? I gave him a choice, leave voluntarily or leave in pieces. He chose the former. Dante poured 2 cups of coffee, handed her one that he'd already doctored with cream and sugar, exactly how she liked it. It's decaf. Anna bought it yesterday. They sat at the kitchen table, the early morning quiet surrounding them. Dante looked exhausted beneath his controlled exterior, shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Did you sleep at all? Evelyn asked. No, too much to coordinate. He rubbed his face. But it's done now. Vincent's operations are being dismantled as we speak. His people are either joining my organization or leaving town with him. The territory he tried to take is secured. Just like that? Just like that. He met her eyes. I told you I would handle it. I know, I just didn't expect you to handle it so thoroughly. I don't do anything halfway, Evelyn. You know that. She did know that. It was simultaneously his greatest strength and his most dangerous flaw. Can I go home now? She asked. Back to my apartment? Technically, yes. Vincent's not a threat anymore, but Dante hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I'd feel better if you stayed here, at least for a while, until I'm certain there aren't any loose ends. How long is a while? A week, maybe 2. Dante, I have a life. I can't just hide in a brownstone for 2 weeks. You can work remotely. I'll have your things brought from the apartment. Anything you need, Anna can get for you. You'll be comfortable here." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" He leaned forward, intense. "Because from where I'm sitting, the point is keeping you and our son safe. Everything else is secondary. The point is I'm not a possession you can lock away for safekeeping. I know you're not." His voice gentled. "But you're also not invincible, Evelyn. You're 6 months pregnant and someone just threatened to hurt you. Forgive me for wanting to minimize that risk." He was right. She hated that he was right, hated the loss of autonomy it represented, but he was absolutely right. "1 week," she said finally. "I'll stay for 1 week, then I'm going back to my apartment and my job and my normal life." 1 week. Dante agreed immediately, probably because he'd been prepared to negotiate for longer. "Thank you." They finished their coffee in silence. The sun was fully up now, painting the kitchen in soft gold light. Dante's phone kept buzzing with updates. The systematic destruction of Vincent Corelli's empire, delivered in terse text messages that he read and responded to with mechanical efficiency. "You should sleep," Evelyn said. "You look like you're about to fall over." "I'm fine." "Dante, sleep." He smiled, tired but genuine. "Is that an order?" "Yes, from the mother of your child, which means you have to listen." "That's not how biology works." "It's how my biology works. Sleep. I'll wake you if anything important happens." Dante stood, swaying slightly before catching himself on the chair. Evelyn watched him with concern, saw him notice her concern and try to hide his exhaustion behind his usual controlled facade. "There's a bedroom on the first floor," he said. "I'll just rest there for an hour." He made it to the couch in the living room before collapsing fully clothed, asleep before his head hit the cushion. Evelyn found a blanket and covered him, careful not to wake him. In sleep, Dante looked younger, less burdened. His face relaxed into something almost peaceful, the lines of tension smoothing out. She'd never seen him sleep before. In 3 years of marriage, he'd always woken before her, was always already dressed and working by the time she opened her eyes. She'd sometimes wondered if he slept at all, or if he just recharged in some mechanical way that didn't require vulnerability. But here he was, unconscious and defenseless, trusting her to wake him if danger came. It was the most honest thing he'd ever shown her. The week that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Dante stayed at the brownstone, working from the study on the first floor, emerging periodically to check on Evelyn or bring her food that Anna had prepared. They ate meals together, sat in comfortable silence while he worked through business matters, and she read baby books, existed in the same space without the constant tension that had defined their marriage. It was almost domestic, almost normal. On the third day, Evelyn woke to find boxes stacked in the hallway outside her room. Her things from the apartment, clothes, books, personal items carefully packed. "I had everything brought over," Dante said when she found him in the kitchen. "So you'd be more comfortable." "You went into my apartment?" "I had movers do it. Anna supervised to make sure nothing was damaged." He poured her orange juice without being asked. "Was that wrong?" "It should have been. Should have felt like another violation of her boundaries. Instead, it felt like consideration. Dante actually thinking about what would make her comfortable instead of assuming he already knew. "No," she admitted. "It was thoughtful, thank you." His smile was small but pleased, like he'd won some small victory. That afternoon, they attended a birthing class together. It had been scheduled for weeks, and Evelyn had assumed she'd go alone. But Dante appeared at 2 o'clock, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater that made him look unexpectedly approachable. "Ready?" he asked. The class was held in a community center, full of other expectant couples in various stages of pregnancy. They sat on yoga mats in a circle while the instructor, a cheerful woman named Monica, talked them through breathing exercises and pain management techniques. "Partners, I want you to support your laboring mothers," Monica said. "Put your hand on her back, right here, and apply gentle pressure during contractions." Dante's hand was warm through Evelyn's shirt, his touch careful and uncertain. She could feel him concentrating, trying to get the pressure exactly right. "How's that?" he whispered. "Good. Perfect, actually." They practiced positions for labor, ways to move through contractions, how partners could help. Dante approached it all with the focused intensity he brought to everything, asking questions, taking mental notes, completely serious about learning how to be useful during the birth. Afterward, walking back to his car,
Evelyn found herself laughing. What? Dante asked. You.
You approached that birthing class like it was a hostile takeover. I wanted to learn the material properly. You asked Monica about optimal breathing ratios. Nobody asks about optimal breathing ratios. Well, maybe they should. If there's a more efficient way to manage pain, I want to know about it. Evelyn shook her head, still smiling. You're ridiculous. I'm thorough. Same thing. But she was charmed despite herself. Watching Dante Russo, a man who controlled criminal empires and terrified grown men, earnestly practicing breathing techniques with a room full of pregnant women was somehow endearing. Back at the brownstone, they made dinner together, or rather, Evelyn watched Dante attempt to make dinner while Anna hovered in the background, clearly concerned about her kitchen's well-being. You've never cooked before, Evelyn observed as he struggled with an onion. I've cooked. Reservations don't count as cooking. I've used a stove, occasionally. To heat water for coffee? He pointed the knife at her. You're enjoying this. Immensely. They ended up ordering takeout while Anna rescued the remains of Dante's attempted carbonara. They ate on the couch, containers spread across the coffee table, arguing about baby names. Leo is good, Dante said. But what about a middle name? I haven't decided yet. Alexander, James, something strong. Those are very traditional. What's wrong with traditional? Nothing. I just want something that means something, not just a name that sounds good. Dante considered this. My grandfather's name was Antonio. He was the only one in the family who encouraged me to think beyond the business, to consider what I wanted instead of what was expected. Antonio, Evelyn repeated, testing it. Leo Antonio Hart. Leo Antonio Russo Hart, Dante countered. She looked at him surprised. Hyphenated? He's both of ours. Why shouldn't his name reflect that? I thought you'd insist on just Russo. I thought I would too. Dante set down his food, serious now. But you were right about what you said before, about letting him choose his own path. A hyphenated name gives him options. He can use both or choose one when he's older. It's democratic. Dante Russo using the word democratic. I never thought I'd see the day. Fatherhood is changing me. Or maybe you're just becoming who you were supposed to be all along. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between hope and fear, and something else that made her heart beat faster. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities neither of them was quite ready to name. Then Leo kicked, hard enough that Evelyn gasped and put her hand on her belly. He's active tonight, she said. Can I? Dante gestured toward her stomach. Can I feel? She guided his hand to where Leo was doing his acrobatics. They sat there in silence, Dante's palm warm against her belly, both of them feeling their son move beneath the surface. That's incredible, Dante whispered. He's so strong. He takes after his father. Dante's eyes met hers. I hope he takes after his mother, brave and stubborn and unwilling to accept less than what she deserves. The words hung in the air between them. Evelyn knew she should move away, should reestablish the boundaries they'd carefully maintained. But Dante's hand was still on her belly, and Leo was still moving, and for just this moment, they felt like something she'd never let them be. A family. On the 7th day, Dr. Reeves called with news. There had been some irregularities in Evelyn's latest blood work, nothing immediately concerning, but she wanted to see her for a follow-up appointment as soon as possible. Dante drove her to the clinic, his hands tight on the steering wheel, tension radiating from every line of his body. In the waiting room, he sat beside her, his knee bouncing with nervous energy. It's probably nothing, Evelyn said. But it might be something. Dante, you can't control this. You just have to trust that it'll be okay. I don't trust easily. I've noticed. Doctor. Reeves brought them back quickly, her expression professionally neutral, in a way that made Evelyn's stomach drop. She ran through another series of tests, drew more blood, performed an ultrasound that took longer than usual. Finally, she sat back and faced them both. Evelyn, your blood pressure is elevated, not dangerously so, but higher than I'd like at this stage of pregnancy. Combined with some protein in your urine, we need to start monitoring for preeclampsia. The word landed like a stone. What does that mean? Dante asked, his voice sharp with fear poorly disguised as authority. It means we watch her carefully. More frequent appointments, blood pressure monitoring at home, reduced stress, plenty of rest. If it progresses, we may need to consider early delivery. How early? Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, it's just elevated blood pressure. We catch it early, manage it properly. There's every reason to believe you'll carry to term without complications. Dr. Reeves pulled out a prescription pad. But Evelyn, I'm serious about the stress reduction. Whatever's going on in your life that's causing tension, you need to minimize it. Dante's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. They left the clinic in silence, drove back to the brownstone in silence, sat in the parked car in silence until finally Dante spoke. This is my fault.
It is. The stress of the divorce, Vincent's threat, being dragged into my world, all of it contributed to this. You don't know that. Don't I? He turned to face her. Dr. Reeves said stress reduction. The biggest source of stress in your life is me. Evelyn couldn't argue with that. It was true. From the moment she'd married him to this very conversation, Dante had been a constant source of tension. So what do you want to do? She asked quietly. What I should have done months ago. Let you go. Actually let you go, without legal battles or negotiations or trying to maintain control. You wanted freedom. You deserve freedom. And our son deserves a mother who's healthy and happy, not sick from stress I'm causing. Dante, I'll finalize the divorce. No contest, no delays. You can go back to your apartment, your job, your life. I'll stay involved with Leo's life as much or as little as you want to allow. But I won't force anything anymore. I won't be the reason your blood pressure's elevated and you're at risk. He said it all calmly, rationally, like he was presenting a business proposal instead of dismantling the fragile connection they'd been building. Is that what you want? Evelyn asked. What I want doesn't matter. What matters is keeping you both safe. Answer the question, Dante. Is that what you want? He was quiet for a long moment, staring straight ahead through the windshield. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. No, it's not what I want. I want to be part of your life, part of his life. I want dinners together and birthing classes and stupid arguments about cooking. I want to feel him kick and watch you roll your eyes at my questions and fall asleep knowing you're both safe under the same roof. He turned to look at her. But what I want isn't as important as what you need, and what you need is peace. Evelyn's throat tightened. This was the most honest Dante had ever been with her, admitting what he wanted while simultaneously prioritizing her well-being over his own desires. It was exactly the kind of man she'd needed him to be 3 years ago. What if peace isn't the same as distance? She asked quietly. What do you mean? What if the stress isn't coming from you being in my life, but from all the ways we keep pretending we're not connected? The divorce proceedings, the negotiations, the careful boundaries, all of it takes energy. All of it creates tension. You're saying the solution is less boundaries? I'm saying maybe we stop fighting what this is and just let it be what it is. We're having a son together. We're going to be in each other's lives forever, whether we like it or not. Maybe it's time we stopped approaching that like a problem to be solved and started approaching it like a reality to be lived with. Dante studied her face, searching for something. What are you proposing? I don't know yet. I just know that trying to separate completely isn't working, and trying to stay married wasn't working either. Maybe there's something in between. Like what? Like being honest with each other. Like being actual partners in raising our son instead of adversaries negotiating custody terms. Like trusting each other to do the right thing without legally binding contracts forcing us to. That requires a lot of trust. Yes, it does. And you trust me? After everything? Evelyn thought about the past months, Dante showing up to appointments, bringing her tea, reading parenting books, learning breathing techniques, eliminating threats to keep her safe, actions instead of promises. I'm starting to, she admitted. Something shifted in his expression, hope breaking through careful control. Then let's try it your way, he said. No more divorce proceedings, no more legal warfare. Just two people trying to figure out how to raise a son together. No more trying to control me? No more trying to control you. He held out his hand. Deal? Evelyn shook it, formal and serious. Deal.
They sat there in the car, hands still clasped, both of them aware that they'd just made an agreement that was either the smartest decision of their lives or the most catastrophic. Time would tell which. The weeks that followed their agreement became something Evelyn had never experienced before, a kind of partnership that existed outside traditional definitions. She moved back to her apartment, but Dante visited almost daily, bringing groceries she hadn't asked for, sitting with her during the evening hours when her blood pressure was most likely to spike, monitoring her health with the focused attention of someone who'd made it his mission to keep her safe. They weren't together. They also weren't apart. It was confusing and complicated and somehow exactly what they both needed. One evening in late March, Evelyn was folding baby clothes, tiny onesies and soft blankets that Sarah had sent, when her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Evelyn Hart?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar and tense. "Who's asking?" "My name is Rachel Corelli, Vincent's wife." A pause. "Former wife, I guess. He left me when he left Chicago." Evelyn's hand tightened on the phone. "I don't think we have anything to discuss." "Please don't hang up. I'm not calling to threaten you or cause problems. I'm calling to warn you." "Warn me about what?" "Vincent didn't leave Chicago because Dante scared him. He left because someone higher up the chain told him to back off. Someone who sees you as a bigger opportunity than Vincent did." The room suddenly felt colder. "What are you talking about?" "There's a man named Marcus DeVille. He operates out of New York, controls most of the eastern seaboard. Vincent was working for him, trying to expand into Chicago on DeVille's orders. When Dante pushed back, DeVille let Vincent take the fall. But he's not done. He's just being more strategic." "Why are you telling me this?" Rachel's voice cracked slightly. "Because Vincent left me with nothing. 20 years of marriage, and he left me with nothing because he was too afraid of DeVille to take anything that might be tracked. I have 3 kids, Evelyn. 3 kids who need to eat, and a mortgage I can't pay because my husband chose his boss over his family." She took a shaky breath. "I don't want what happened to me to happen to you. You have a choice. I didn't." "What choice?" "Get away from Dante Russo. Take your baby and disappear before DeVille decides you're useful. Because once he makes that decision, there won't be any negotiating your way out." The line went dead. Evelyn sat frozen, the baby clothes forgotten in her lap. Marcus DeVille. She'd heard the name before, whispered in the background of conversations Dante thought she wasn't listening to. A ghost who moved pieces on a board that stretched across multiple states. Her phone rang again. This time it was Dante. "I'm outside," he said. "Can I come up?" She buzzed him in, unlocked her door, and waited. When he appeared in her doorway, she could tell immediately that something was wrong. His expression was carefully neutral, in the way it only got when he was concealing serious concern. "We need to talk," he said. "About Marcus DeVille?" His eyes narrowed. "How do you know that name?" "Rachel Corelli just called me. Vincent's ex-wife. She warned me that DeVille is still interested in using me as leverage against you." Dante closed the door behind him, locked it with deliberate precision. What else did she say? Evelyn relayed the conversation while Dante listened with increasing tension. When she finished, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "I need everything you can find on Rachel Corelli. Current location, phone records, financial situation. And I need it an hour ago." He hung up and turned back to Evelyn. "She's right. DeVille is the one who pushed Vincent to move into Chicago. I've been tracking his movements for weeks, trying to figure out his next play." "And?" "And he's coming here, to Chicago, next week." Dante sat down on her secondhand couch, suddenly looking exhausted. "There's going to be a meeting, all the major players from the Eastern Territories. DeVille wants to consolidate power, establish clear boundaries, eliminate competition. Which includes you. Which includes me." He rubbed his face. "I've been preparing for this, building alliances, strengthening my position. But DeVille is smart. He's patient. He won't make a move unless he knows he can win." "So what does that have to do with me?" "Everything." Dante met her eyes. "You're my weakness, Evelyn. Everyone knows it. DeVille knows it. The moment he walked away from Vincent's failed move, he started gathering information about you. Where you live, where you work, who your friends are. He's been building a file on how to hurt me through you.
Then Rachel was right. I should leave. Take Leo and disappear before— No. The word was sharp, final.
Running won't help. DeVille has resources in every major city. If he wants to find you, he'll find you. The only way to keep you safe is to eliminate him as a threat. And how do you plan to do that? By making sure he understands that touching you would start a war he can't win. Dante leaned forward, intense. The meeting next week. I'm going to use it to establish terms. Clear, unmistakable terms that make you and Leo off limits to everyone in that room. You're going to tell them about the baby? I'm going to tell them that anyone who threatens my family will face consequences that make Vincent's exile look merciful. Evelyn's hands moved to her belly, protective. At 32 weeks, Leo was running out of room, his movements more pronounced, more real with each passing day. The idea of him being used as leverage in some criminal power play made her physically ill. What if they don't listen? She asked quietly. They'll listen, because I'm going to give them something they want more than they want to hurt me. What? Territory? Access. A piece of Chicago that DeVille's been trying to control for years. I'll give it to him freely, as a gesture of good faith and a demonstration that I'm willing to negotiate. In exchange, you and Leo become permanently untouchable. You're going to give up part of your empire to protect us? Without hesitation. The certainty in his voice startled her. This was Dante Russo, a man who'd built his entire identity around control and power, offering to sacrifice a portion of his kingdom for her safety. That's a big risk, Evelyn said. You're worth it. He's worth it. Your people won't understand. They'll see it as weakness. Then they'll be wrong. Protecting my family isn't weakness. It's the only thing that actually matters. He reached for her hand. I know you didn't ask for this. Didn't ask to be dragged into my world or used as a bargaining chip in someone else's power games. If I could go back and do things differently. But you can't. None of us can. Evelyn squeezed his hand. So what do we do now?
Now we prepare. The meeting is Friday night. Between now and then, I need you somewhere safe.
Not your apartment, not the brownstone. Somewhere nobody would think to look. Where? Dante pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of a lake house surrounded by trees, isolated and beautiful. It's 3 hours north, off the grid, no digital footprint. I bought it last year as a backup location. Nobody knows about it except me and the lawyer who handled the purchase under a false name. You want me to hide in the woods while you negotiate with criminals? I want you and our son somewhere that Marcus DeVille can't touch you while I make sure he never wants to try. Evelyn looked at the photo again. The house looked peaceful, the kind of place where you could hear yourself think, the kind of place where a woman could prepare for motherhood without wondering if her baby was going to become a target before he was even born. Okay, she said finally. I'll go. But Dante, if something happens to you at this meeting, nothing's going to happen to me. You can't promise that. I can promise that I'll do everything in my power to come back. To both of you. He stood, pulled her gently to her feet. Pack a bag. Enough for a week. I'll have someone drive you up tomorrow morning. Someone I trust. Anna's son. Former Marine, good instincts, completely loyal. He'll stay at the property with you until this is resolved. Evelyn nodded, already mentally cataloging what she'd need. Clothes, books, the prenatal vitamins Dr. Reeves had prescribed. The baby monitor she'd bought on sale last week, even though Leo wouldn't need it for months. Hope disguised as preparation. Dante pulled her into an embrace, careful of her belly, his arms solid and warm around her. She let herself lean into him, just for a moment. Let herself feel protected instead of independent. I'm going to fix this, he murmured against her hair. I promise. She wanted to believe him. The drive north the next morning was quiet, the landscape shifting from urban sprawl to suburban comfort to rural isolation. Anna's son, a man named James, who spoke only when necessary and drove with military precision, navigated the winding roads with easy confidence. The lake house was even more beautiful than the photo had suggested. 2 stories of weathered wood and wide windows, surrounded by pine trees and overlooking water that stretched like glass toward the horizon. Inside, it was furnished simply but comfortably. Thick rugs, deep couches, a kitchen that looked barely used. Mr. Russo had supplies delivered yesterday, James said, showing her the fully stocked refrigerator and pantry. If you need anything else, there's a general store about 20 minutes away, but I'd prefer you stay on the property until we get the all clear. How long do you think that will be? Meetings Friday night. If everything goes according to plan, we could be back in Chicago by Sunday. If everything went according to plan. The qualifier hung heavy in the air between them. James set up his quarters in the small guest room on the first floor, positioning himself between Evelyn and any potential threat from outside. He was professional, efficient, and utterly intimidating in the way that trained soldiers often were. Evelyn spent the afternoon exploring the house, trying not to think about what was happening back in Chicago. Dante had texted twice, once to confirm she'd arrived safely, once to tell her he was in meetings preparing for Friday. Both messages were brief, informative, carefully devoid of emotion. She wished he'd said something more, something personal. That night, alone in the master bedroom with its view of the lake, Evelyn felt Leo moving restlessly inside her. She put her hands on her belly, trying to soothe him. "It's okay," she whispered. "We're okay. Your father's handling things. He's good at handling things." Her phone buzzed, a text from Dante. "Can you talk?" She called him immediately. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No, I just wanted to hear your voice." He sounded tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from too many decisions and not enough sleep. "How's the house?" "Beautiful, peaceful. A little lonely, but beautiful. I'm sorry I sent you away." "Don't be. You're right. This is safer." "Doesn't make it easier." They were quiet for a moment, the silence comfortable in a way it had never been during their marriage. "Dante," Evelyn said finally, "be careful on Friday. Whatever you're planning, whatever deal you're making, don't sacrifice too much. Don't give away so much of yourself that there's nothing left. I'll have what matters. You, Leo. Everything else is negotiable. I mean it. I don't want you resenting us later because you had to give up your empire to keep us safe." "Evelyn," his voice was firm, certain. "I've been building this empire for 15 years. It's given me power, wealth, respect. But it's never given me what I felt the first time I heard Leo's heartbeat. It's never given me what I feel when you smile at me because I did something right instead of something expected. The empire is just business. Your life." Evelyn's throat tightened. "When did you get so wise?" "When I almost lost the only thing that actually matters." They talked for another hour about nothing important. Baby names they'd already discussed. Birth plans that would probably fall apart the moment labor started. What color to paint a nursery that didn't exist yet. Normal things. Future things. The kind of conversation that people who were building something together had. When they finally hung up, Evelyn felt marginally better. Dante was preparing for Friday, and she was here, safe and isolated. It would work out. It had to. Friday arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. Evelyn spent the morning trying to distract herself with the baby books Dante had annotated, but her mind kept drifting to Chicago, to a meeting room, somewhere in the city where men were gathering to discuss territories and power and whether her life was worth negotiating over. Her phone rang at noon. "Sarah." "Where are you?" her friend demanded. "I stopped by your apartment and you're not there. Neither are half your things." Evelyn had debated telling Sarah about the lake house, about DeVille's threat, about all of it. But Sarah deserved to know. She explained everything. "Jesus Christ, Evie," Sarah's voice was a mixture of concern and fury. "And Dante thinks he can just negotiate you and the baby into safety? With criminals? He's one of them, Sarah. If anyone can navigate this, it's him. Or he's walking into a trap and you're 3 hours away with no way to help if things go wrong. What would you have me do? Drive back to Chicago and storm into a meeting of mob bosses? No. But I don't like you being isolated with no backup plan. I have James, Anna's son. He's..." A loud crash from downstairs cut her off. "Evie? What was that?" "I don't know. Stay on the line." Evelyn moved to the bedroom door, opened it carefully. She could hear James's voice from the first floor, sharp and commanding. "I said identify yourself now." A woman's voice, frightened. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't know anyone was here. The door was unlocked and I..." "The door was not unlocked. How did you get in?" "I have a key. Mr. Russo gave it to me months ago. I'm the property caretaker." Evelyn came down the stairs carefully,
one hand on the railing. In the living room, James had positioned himself between her and a woman in her 50s, rain-soaked and clearly terrified. "It's okay," Evelyn said. "Let her explain." The woman, who introduced herself as Margaret, explained that Dante had hired her last year to check on the property weekly, maintain the grounds, handle repairs. She hadn't been told anyone would be staying here and had come by to do her regular inspection. James verified her story with a series of phone calls while Margaret sat on the couch, apologizing repeatedly. Finally, he nodded. "She's legitimate. Mr. Russo confirms he hired her. He apologizes for not informing us she'd be stopping by." "It's fine," Evelyn said, though her heart was still racing. "Margaret, I'm sorry you were scared. We're just being cautious." Margaret left quickly, promising to reschedule her visits, and James went back to his position by the windows. But the interruption had shattered Evelyn's fragile calm. "Sarah," she said into her phone, "still there?" "Still here. And now I'm definitely worried." "Don't be. It was just a miscommunication. Call me the second you hear anything from Dante. I don't care what time it is." "I will. I promise." The afternoon dragged into evening. Evelyn tried to eat dinner, but managed only a few bites before giving up. James was on high alert now, checking windows and doors with renewed frequency. At 7 o'clock, Dante texted, "Meeting starting soon. I'll call when it's done." At 8, another text. "Everything proceeding as planned." At 9, nothing. 10 o'clock, 11, midnight, nothing. Evelyn paced the master bedroom, her phone clutched in her hand while Leo did acrobatics inside her. She tried calling Dante. Straight to voicemail. Tried texting. No response. At 1 in the morning, James knocked on her door. "Mrs. Hart, I just got a message from one of Mr. Russo's associates. The meeting ran long, but it's concluded. Mr. Russo is fine." Relief flooded through her. "Did he say what happened?" "Only that the negotiations were successful, and he'll call you soon." Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. James left, and she sat on the edge of the bed, waiting. Her phone finally rang at 2 in the morning. "Dante?" "It's done." His voice was rough, exhausted. "DeVille agreed to the terms. You and Leo are off limits, permanently, untouchable." "What did you have to give up?" "The West Side operations. About a third of my Chicago territory. Some shipping routes I'd been developing." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing stock trades instead of pieces of his empire. "It's worth it, Evelyn. Every piece I gave up is worth it if it means you're both safe." "Dante, I'm sorry. I know how much—" "Don't apologize. I made my choice, and I'd make it again." "Was it difficult, the negotiation?" "DeVille drove a hard bargain, but I had something he wanted more than he wanted to hurt me. Territory without a fight. He took it." "And that's it? It's really over?" "The immediate threat is over. DeVille agreed to formal terms that anyone who violated would face combined retaliation from all the families present. It's as close to a guarantee as exists in this world." Evelyn felt tears sliding down her face, relief and exhaustion and gratitude all mixed together. "Thank you." "You don't thank someone for protecting their family, Evelyn. That's just what you do." "Still, thank you. I'll be there tomorrow to bring you home. Try to get some sleep." After they hung up, Evelyn finally let herself collapse into bed, the tension of the past days draining away. Leo seemed to settle too, as if he could sense that the danger had passed. She dreamed of the future, of bringing her son home to her small apartment, of Dante teaching him to tie his shoes, of birthday parties and school plays, and all the ordinary moments that made up a life. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and Dante was sitting in the chair beside her bed, watching her sleep. "How long have you been here?" she asked groggily. "An hour, maybe 2. I didn't want to wake you." She sat up slowly, her back protesting. "You look terrible." "I haven't slept in 3 days." But he was smiling, genuine and unguarded. "It's over, Evelyn. The threat, the negotiations, all of it. You can go home, back to your life." "And you?" "I'll be around, as much or as little as you want me to be." Evelyn looked at him. This man who had started as a terrible husband and was slowly, painfully learning to be something better. Not perfect, not even close. But trying. Actually trying. "I want you around," she said quietly. Not hovering, not controlling, just around. For Leo. For me. His smile widened. I can do that. They drove back to Chicago together, James following in a separate car. The city appeared on the horizon like a promise, and Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest. She was going home. To her apartment, her life, her freedom. And Dante would be part of it. Not as a husband, not as a owner, but as a partner, a father. Someone who'd proven he could put her and their son first, even when it cost him everything. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined when she'd walked into that lawyer's office months ago, prepared to divorce the man beside her. But it might be something better. It might be the beginning of something real. The final weeks of Evelyn's pregnancy unfolded with a simplicity that felt almost suspicious after months of chaos. She returned to work at Marcello's on limited hours, her belly now so prominent that customers would smile and ask when she was due. Marcus had indeed upgraded the security system with Dante's money, and there were always 2 guards stationed discreetly near the entrance during evening shifts. Dante visited her apartment 3 or 4 times a week, never staying the night, but always staying long enough to matter. He'd arrive with dinner from wherever he'd been working, sit with her while she ate, ask about her day in a way that suggested he actually cared about the answer. They'd fallen into a rhythm that was neither marriage nor separation, but something unnamed and surprisingly comfortable. One evening in mid-April, Evelyn was folding laundry when a sharp pain seized her lower back. She gasped, bracing herself against the couch until it passed. Braxton Hicks contractions. Dr. Reeves had warned her about these. Practice contractions that could start weeks before actual labor. Nothing to worry about unless they became regular. Evelyn counted. The next one came 20 minutes later. Then 18. Then 15. She called Dante. "Something's wrong," she said when he answered. "I'm on my way. Don't move." "Dante, I don't think it's labor yet. It's just—" But he'd already hung up. He arrived 12 minutes later, letting himself in with the key she'd given him last month. His hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, and he looked more panicked than she'd ever seen him. "What's happening? Are you in pain? Should I call an ambulance?" "Dante, breathe." Evelyn demonstrated the breathing technique they'd learned in class. "It's probably Braxton Hicks. False labor. Totally normal at 37 weeks. "Probably?" "I called Dr. Reeves. She said to time them and call back if they get closer than 5 minutes apart, or my water breaks." "How far apart are they now?" "About 12 minutes. Dante pulled out his phone, opened what appeared to be a stopwatch app. "Okay, we'll time them. Together." They sat on her couch, Dante's hand on her belly, both of them watching the clock. The contractions continued. 12 minutes, 10, 13, 11. Irregular and manageable. After 2 hours with no progression, Dr. Reeves called back and confirmed it was false labor. "Your body's just practicing," she said. "Could be days or weeks before the real thing starts. Try to rest." Dante refused to leave. He made up the couch for himself, ignoring Evelyn's protest that he had a perfectly good penthouse across town. "I'm staying," he said firmly, "in case something changes." Nothing changed that night, but Dante stayed anyway, and when Evelyn woke at 3 in the morning to use the bathroom for the 5th time, she found him awake on the couch, reading another parenting book by lamplight. "You should sleep," she whispered. "Can't. Too worried I'll miss something." "Dante, you can't stay awake for the next 3 weeks waiting for labor to start. Watch me." She smiled despite herself and went back to bed. 2 weeks later, on a warm Tuesday evening in early May, Evelyn's water broke while she was loading the dishwasher. The sensation was unmistakable, a warm gush that soaked through her pants and pooled on the kitchen floor. For a moment, she just stood there, dish soap dripping from her hands, staring at the puddle and thinking with perfect clarity, "This is it." She called Dante with remarkable calm. "My water just broke." There was a crash on his end, like he'd dropped something. "I'm coming. Don't move. Are you having contractions?" "Not yet, but Dr. Reeves said they'll probably start soon after." She gasped as the first real contraction hit, different from the Braxton Hicks, deeper and more insistent. "Okay, never mind. They're starting." "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Time them. Breathe. Don't do anything crazy." "What would I possibly do that's crazy?" "I don't know. You're unpredictable. Just promise me you'll wait for me.
I promise I'll try not to have the baby before you get here." She hung up and called Dr. Reeves, who told her to come to the hospital when contractions were 5 minutes apart or sooner. Then she called Sarah, who screamed with excitement and promised to meet her at the hospital. Dante arrived in 8 minutes, breathless, and carrying the hospital bag they'd packed together 2 weeks ago. He found Evelyn sitting on the couch, breathing through another contraction, her face flushed with effort and exhilaration. "How far apart?" he asked. "That was number 3, about 8 minutes. Okay, we have time." He knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Are you scared?" "Terrified." "Me too." They smiled at each other, two people about to cross a threshold that would change everything. The contractions intensified over the next hour, coming closer together, demanding more of Evelyn's focus and breath. Dante stayed beside her through each one, his hand on her back, providing counterpressure exactly like they'd practiced, his voice steady as he coached her breathing. At 5 minutes apart, they drove to the hospital through streets that were quieter than Evelyn had ever seen them. The city felt suspended, waiting, as if it knew something momentous was about to happen. "Doctor." Reeves met them in labor and delivery, examining Evelyn with practiced efficiency. 4 centimeters dilated. "You're in active labor. Let's get you settled in a room." The hours that followed blurred into a haze of pain and breathing, and Dante's voice anchoring her through each contraction. He never left her side, never flinched when she gripped his hand hard enough to bruise, never complained when she snapped at him during a particularly brutal contraction. Sarah arrived around midnight, bringing ice chips and encouragement. She sat on Evelyn's other side, telling ridiculous stories to distract her between contractions, making her laugh even when laughing hurt. At 2 in the morning, Evelyn was at 8 centimeters and exhausted beyond anything she'd ever experienced. The pain had transcended description, become something elemental and all-consuming. "I can't do this," she gasped. "It's too much. I can't." "Yes, you can." Dante's face was close to hers, his eyes fierce and certain. "You're the strongest person I know, Evelyn. You left me when everyone said you couldn't. You built a life from nothing. You faced down my world and didn't break. You can do this." "I'm scared." "I know, but you're not alone. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Another contraction built, and she rode it with Dante's hand in hers, his voice counting her through the breathing, his presence the only solid thing in a world that had become nothing but pain and effort. At 4:17 in the morning, Dr. Reeves checked her again and smiled. 10 centimeters. Evelyn, you're ready. On the next contraction, I want you to push." Everything that came after existed in fragments. The overwhelming pressure, the burning stretch, Dr. Reeves's calm instructions, Dante's face above hers, tears streaming down his cheeks, telling her she was amazing. She was doing it. She was bringing their son into the world. Sarah's hand gripping hers, steady and strong. The moment when Dr. Reeves said, "One more push, that's all you need," and Evelyn gathered every remaining scrap of strength and pushed. And then, a cry. High and indignant and absolutely perfect. "It's a boy," Dr. Reeves announced, though they already knew, had known for months. But hearing it now, with that cry filling the room, made it real in a way all the ultrasounds and planning never had. They placed him on Evelyn's chest, this tiny, perfect human with dark hair and Dante's nose and lungs that worked magnificently. He was crying, his little fists waving, his eyes squeezed shut against the brightness of the world. "Hi, Leo," Evelyn whispered, her voice breaking. "Hi, baby. We've been waiting for you." She looked up at Dante and found him completely undone. Tears were pouring down his face, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch his son's tiny head. "He's perfect," Dante said, his voice wrecked. "He's absolutely perfect. He has your nose. He has your determination. Listen to those lungs." Leo was still crying, and Evelyn brought him closer, skin to skin, letting him feel her heartbeat. Gradually, his cries quieted. His eyes opened, dark and unfocused but searching, looking for his mother, looking for safety, and finding it. "Doctor." Reeves finished the necessary medical procedures while a nurse checked Leo's vitals, weighed him, measured him. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 19 inches long, perfect APGAR scores, healthy and strong and absolutely beautiful. They handed him to Dante while they helped Evelyn into a clean gown and moved her to the recovery room. She watched Dante hold his son for the first time, watched him study every tiny feature with wonder and fear and fierce protective love.
I don't know how to do this, he said quietly, not taking his eyes off Leo. I don't know how to be what he needs. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. What if I mess him up? What if I'm too much like my father? You won't be. Evelyn reached for his hand. Because you're already asking the questions my father never did. You're already worried about being good enough. That's how I know you will be. Sarah had stepped out to give them privacy, but now she peeked back in, her eyes red from crying. Can I meet him? Come here, Evelyn said. Sarah approached the bed, her face soft with emotion as she looked at the baby in Dante's arms. He's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. What's his name? Leo Antonio Russo Hart, Evelyn said. Dante looked at her, surprised. You kept the hyphen? He's both of ours. The name should reflect that. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Gratitude and relief, and something deeper that Evelyn couldn't quite name. The next hours passed in a blur of visitors and tests, and learning how to nurse while exhausted beyond measure. Evelyn's hospital room filled with flowers, some from friends, some from business associates of Dante's who were probably terrified not to send something. Anna arrived with homemade food and practical advice. Marcus from Marcello's came by with a card signed by the entire staff. Even Victoria Chen, Dante's lawyer, stopped in briefly with a very expensive baby gift and an awkward but genuine congratulation. Through it all, Dante stayed. He held Leo when Evelyn needed to sleep, learned to change diapers with the same focused intensity he brought to everything, asked the nurses 1,000 questions about infant care. He was exhausted and overwhelmed and absolutely devoted. On the second day, when Evelyn woke from a nap, she found Dante asleep in the chair beside her bed, Leo sleeping on his chest. Dante's hand was cupped protectively around the baby's back, his face relaxed in sleep, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked completely at peace. This was the man she'd divorced, the man who'd failed as a husband but was learning to be a father, the man who'd given up 1/3 of his empire to keep her and Leo safe, the man who was here, present, trying. Dr. Reeves discharged them on the 3rd day with a long list of instructions and a reminder to schedule Leo's 2-week checkup. Dante had arranged for a car service to drive them home, and when they pulled up to Evelyn's apartment building, she was surprised to see him get out with them. I thought you'd be going back to work, she said. I took 2 weeks off. Victoria almost had a stroke, but I don't care. I'm not missing this. Dante, you don't have to. I want to. Please let me want to. So Dante moved into her small apartment temporarily, sleeping on the couch, helping with middle-of-the-night feedings, learning the rhythm of life with a newborn. He was terrible at it initially, too nervous, too careful, treating Leo like he might break. But he learned. They both learned. How to soothe Leo when he cried. How to interpret his different sounds. How to function on 2 hours of sleep and survive on coffee and sheer determination. 1 week became 2, then 3. Dante kept extending his leave from work, delegating responsibilities, choosing to be present instead of powerful. On a warm evening in June, when Leo was 5 weeks old, Evelyn found Dante standing in her living room at 3 in the morning, holding their son against his shoulder, swaying gently. He wouldn't settle, Dante explained quietly. Didn't want to wake you. You're exhausted. Let me take him. I'm okay. But he moved to sit on the couch, Leo still against his chest. Can I tell you something? Of course. I've been thinking about what you said, about the kind of father I want to be, about choosing who I am instead of just accepting the legacy I inherited. He looked down at Leo, who had finally fallen asleep. I've made some decisions. What kind of decisions? I'm stepping back from the organization, not leaving completely, but transitioning to a legitimate business structure. Real estate development, investment portfolios, things that won't make my son ashamed of what his father does. Evelyn sat down beside him, stunned. Dante, that's your entire life. Your whole empire was built on fear and violence and things I don't want Leo to inherit. I can't undo the past, can't change how I built what I built, but I can change what happens next. He shifted Leo carefully, supporting his head. I don't want him to grow up wondering if his father is a good man or just a powerful one. I want to actually be good, or at least try. That's going to take years. The transition, building something legitimate, then I better start now. He looked at her with absolute certainty. You were right to leave me, Evelyn. I was a terrible husband. I treated you like a possession instead of a partner. I built my entire identity around control and power and forgot what actually mattered. He paused. But I'm not that person anymore. Or I'm trying not to be. I can see that. I've been seeing it for months. Then let me ask you something. Dante's voice was careful, almost nervous. When the divorce was happening, you said you deserved more than what our marriage was. You were absolutely right. But what if I could give you more now? Not the penthouse or the money or any of the things I tried to use to keep you before. Just me. Actually me, trying to be better every day. Would that be enough? Evelyn's heart was hammering. What are you asking? I'm asking if you'd consider giving us another chance. Not jumping back into marriage, not rushing into anything, just dating. Like we should have done before I proposed after knowing you for 3 months. He smiled slightly. I want to court you properly this time. Take you to dinner, learn what movies you like, find out what makes you laugh. I want to fall in love with you instead of just deciding you'd make an acceptable wife. You want to date me while we're co-parenting a newborn? Yes, if you'll let me. Evelyn looked at this man who had started as a terrible husband and was becoming something she'd never expected. Someone genuine, someone trying, someone who chose her and their son over everything else. Okay, she said softly. We can try. His smile was brilliant and completely unguarded. Yeah? Yeah. But Dante? I'm not the same person I was when we got married. I'm not going to be quiet at dinner parties or wear designer clothes I hate, or pretend to be someone I'm not to fit into your world. I don't want you to be anyone but exactly who you are right now. The woman who left me. The woman who fought for her freedom. The woman who's brave enough to let me try again even though I absolutely don't deserve it. You're right. You don't deserve it. I know. I'll spend every day trying to earn it anyway. Leo stirred against Dante's chest, making the small grunting noises that meant he'd wake up hungry in about 5 minutes. Dante looked down at him with such tenderness that Evelyn felt her throat tighten. This was her family, imperfect and complicated, and nothing like what she'd imagined when she'd walked into that law office 6 months ago, ready to end everything. But it was real, and it was theirs. The months that followed were far from easy. Evelyn returned to work part-time at Marcello's, bringing Leo with her for early evening shifts when the restaurant was quiet. Dante continued his business transition, slowly and carefully shifting from illegal operations to legitimate enterprises. It cost him allies who couldn't follow him into legality, cost him power and territory and influence. But he never wavered. He'd show up at Evelyn's apartment after long days of difficult meetings, exhausted but determined. They'd order takeout and eat it on the floor while Leo had tummy time on a blanket between them. They'd talk about their days, about their fears for the future, about what kind of life they wanted to build for their son. They went on actual dates, dinner at small restaurants where nobody knew Dante's name, movies where they could hold hands in the dark, walks through the park with Leo in a stroller. Dante learned what made Evelyn laugh. She learned that he had a weakness for old movies and could quote entire scenes from The Godfather with ironic self-awareness. They were learning each other, actually learning instead of assuming. On Leo's first birthday, they threw a party at the Brownstone in Lincoln Park. Sarah came with her new girlfriend. Marcus brought his grandkids. Anna made a cake that was more frosting than cake. Even some of Dante's business associates showed up, looking slightly uncomfortable in the domestic setting, but genuinely trying to be appropriate. Leo, covered in cake and delighted with the chaos, was passed from person to person while everyone marveled at how much he'd grown. That night, after everyone had left and Leo was asleep in his crib, Evelyn and Dante sat on the Brownstone's back porch, watching the stars appear over the city. I've been thinking, Dante said. Dangerous. He smiled. I want to ask you something, but I need you to know there's no pressure. You can say no and nothing changes between us. Okay. Now I'm nervous. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Evelyn's breath caught. It's not what you think, he said quickly. I mean, it is a ring, but not an engagement ring. Not yet. Not unless you want it to be someday, and only when you're ready. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. This is a promise that I'm going to keep trying, keep being better, keep choosing you and Leo over everything else. And maybe, someday, when you're absolutely sure I've earned it, you'll let me ask you properly. Evelyn took the box, studying the ring. It was beautiful, simple, and honest, without the ostentatious display of wealth that had characterized everything about their first marriage. "You really have changed," she said quietly. "Is that a yes to the promise ring?" "It's a yes to everything. The promise, the possibility, the future we're building." She slipped the ring onto her right hand. "When you ask me properly, and Dante, notice I said when, not if. I want you to know that you've already earned it. You earned it the moment you chose us over your empire. Everything since then has just been confirmation. So if I asked right now, I'd say yes, but I also think we should take our time, keep dating, keep learning each other. And when you do ask, I want it to be because we've built something so solid that marriage is just a formality, not a desperate attempt to hold on to something we're afraid of losing." Dante pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "I can live with that." They sat together in the darkness, listening to the city breathe around them. Inside, Leo slept peacefully, safe and loved, and completely unaware of the complicated journey that had brought his parents to this moment. 2 years later, on a fall evening when Leo was 3 and starting to string together full sentences, Dante proposed properly. Not at a fancy restaurant or with an elaborate display, but in Evelyn's apartment, their apartment now, since he'd officially moved in 6 months ago, while Leo was building a tower with blocks in the corner. "Marry me," he said, no preamble, no grand gesture. Not because it's expected or because it makes legal sense or because of Leo. "Marry me because I love you, because I choose you, because I want to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." Evelyn, who'd been expecting this for months, smiled. "Yes? Yeah? Yeah. On one condition. Anything. We write our own vows. Real ones, honest ones. About who we actually are instead of who we're supposed to be." "Deal." They married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the brownstone, with Leo as the ring bearer and Sarah as the maid of honor. Evelyn wore a simple dress she'd chosen herself, and Dante wore a suit that hadn't cost more than a week's salary. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about respect and partnership and choosing each other every day. It wasn't the fairy tale wedding that their first marriage had been, all society pages and designer everything. It was better. It was real. 5 years after that, Dante's legitimate business empire had grown to rival his criminal one in both size and influence. He'd established a foundation that helped women leaving dangerous relationships, funding legal aid and safe housing and job training. Evelyn ran the foundation, using her own experience to guide its mission. Leo started kindergarten at a public school where nobody cared that his father used to be one of the most feared men in Chicago. He was just Leo, bright and curious and kind, with his mother's determination and his father's strategic mind. On the evening of their 6th wedding anniversary, Evelyn found Dante in Leo's room, reading him a bedtime story. She watched from the doorway as Dante did all the voices, making their son giggle with delight. This was the life she'd built. Not the one she'd imagined when she'd married Dante the first time, full of wealth and status and empty beauty. This life was messy and complicated and absolutely real. It was bedtime stories and foundation work, and a husband who'd learned to be a partner instead of a king. After Leo fell asleep, Dante found Evelyn on their bedroom balcony, looking out over the city. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "About the day I walked into that lawyer's office, planning to divorce you." "Regrets?" "None. Because that decision led to this, to us actually knowing each other, to you becoming the man I needed instead of just the man you thought you should be." "I was so stupid back then." "You were, but you learned. Only because you refused to accept less than you deserved." He kissed her temple. "Thank you for that, for leaving me, for giving me a chance to become someone worth staying for." Evelyn turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd started as her worst decision and became her best one. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "I was never saved, not by you, not by anyone. I saved myself. I walked away when I needed to, built a life when I had to, fought for my freedom when it mattered most." She smiled. You didn't save me, Dante. You just finally became someone I wanted to share my life with. Is that a compliment? It's the truth. I don't need you. I choose you. There's a difference. His smile was full of love and understanding. I choose you too. Every day. Every moment. Inside, Leo called out from his room, wanting water.
Evelyn and Dante looked at each other and laughed. The moment broken, as parenting moments always were, by the practical realities of life. But that was okay, because this was their life, imperfect and complicated and built on the foundation of two people who'd had to fall apart before they could come together properly. This was the story of a woman who fought for her freedom and found love in the process. This was the story of a man who gave up his kingdom to become a father. This was the story of a family built not on power or possession, but on choice and partnership and the daily decision to try. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.